Lewis Hamilton's Qatar qualifying disaster has just exploded into something far bigger after the FIA released brand new internal data on his Ferrari, and the findings are so severe that even teams up and down the paddock were stunned. Moments after Hamilton qualified 18th, the FIA cross-checked Ferrari's telemetry with its own structural analysis and uncovered evidence of a hidden mechanical imbalance between the floor and the rear suspension that explains every violent snap Hamilton reported in Sector 3. This new data not only validates Hamilton's warning that the car was dangerous in fast corners, but exposes a deeper flaw created by Ferrari's decision to freeze development earlier this year, leaving the SF25 technically outdated at one of the harshest circuits on the calendar. Before we break down the full FIA findings, make sure you subscribe right now, because the truth inside Ferrari after this session is bigger than a simple qualifying disaster. Qatar qualifying delivered one of the most alarming performances of Hamilton's Ferrari career, as he was eliminated in Q1 with a lap time of 1 minute 20 seconds and 907 thousandths, placing him 18th. His teammate Charles Leclerc reached Q3, but still ended 10th, more than 1 full second behind Oscar Piastri. The gap between Ferrari and the front-runners was not a matter of driving quality, but a structural confirmation that the SF25 no longer meets the aerodynamic or mechanical demands of modern circuits like Lusail. Hamilton's core complaint came from the lack of rear stability. In the third sector, he suffered sudden sharp snaps through the medium-speed corners and described the car as impossible to commit to. The FIA evidence later validated this by identifying a microscopic disconnection between the floor and the rear suspension, which caused sudden drops in aerodynamic load. These drops do not appear in basic telemetry, but Hamilton felt them instantly and repeatedly. The car simply refused to deliver consistent load, and therefore eliminated any chance of attacking the lap with confidence. Tire behavior intensified the disaster. Ferrari could not bring the tires into the proper temperature range, which meant Hamilton entered the first corners with no bite and no mechanical grip. He lost nearly half a second in the first 4 turns alone. While McLaren and Mercedes activated their tires perfectly, Ferrari began the lap on the back foot. This poor activation meant the aerodynamic instability in the rear became even more exposed because the tires were not providing support when Hamilton leaned on the chassis. The decision to run higher downforce was a desperate attempt to stabilize the car, but the FIA data confirmed it only made the situation worse. Hamilton gained no additional stability while losing time on every straight due to the drag penalty. He therefore ended up with the worst possible combination: slow in the acceleration zones and unpredictable in the fast corners. This setup choice was not a misjudgment from Hamilton, but a sign that Ferrari ran out of tools to compensate for the structural deficit in the SF25. Leclerc's 10th place finish highlighted how deep the problem runs within Ferrari. Even though he advanced to Q3, his car also displayed instability, and he was beaten by midfield teams such as Alpine and Aston Martin. The 3/10 Leclerc gained over Hamilton in Q1 came from being slightly more comfortable with an oversteering balance rather than from a superior package. Ferrari was outperformed not only by rivals, but by the role of their own development strategy. Halting upgrades in April left the SF25 unable to evolve, while others perfected their machinery. Hamilton's radio messages became the emotional anchor of the crisis. His tone lacked frustration because he had already reached a point of resignation. When he told his engineer that the car would not go any faster, he was stating a fact rather than expressing disappointment. A private radio message not broadcast on television revealed him saying the car was dangerous in fast corners and had no grip at all. This warning triggered a more intensive FIA review because a 7-time world champion does not use that language unless the behavior is severe. The FIA's final assessment confirmed that the structural issue between the floor and suspension combined with Ferrari's development freeze created the perfect storm. The SF25 lost aerodynamic coherence under load and failed to produce the stability required for Qatar. As a result, Hamilton now enters Sunday's race starting deep in the field with only strategic freedom and extra tire sets as his tools, while the car continues to overheat in traffic and lose grip when following others. A points finish will require chaos rather than pace. Ferrari is not competing at the front, is trying to survive until the flag. The fundamental problem exposed in Qatar qualifying is that Lewis Hamilton entered session requiring absolute aerodynamic stability while driving a Ferrari that delivered the exact opposite. From the moment he began his first push lap, he felt the rear axle disconnect under load, which prevented him from trusting the car through the medium speed corners that define the Lusail circuit. Without stability, the driver cannot build minimum speed and cannot link sectors with rhythm. Hamilton was therefore fighting the car rather than attacking the track, and every corner amplified the weaknesses of the SF25. The second problem centered around tire temperature. Ferrari struggled to activate the tires quickly enough, which meant Hamilton began his laps with no available mechanical grip. A cold front axle produces immediate understeer, and a cold rear axle exaggerates every instability generated by the chassis. Hamilton lost nearly half a second in the opening sequence, simply because the tires never reach the window that allows the car to rotate naturally. Qatar punishes poor tire activation more than most circuits, and Ferrari arrived without the tools to correct it. A third problem came from the structural behavior identified by the FIA. The data revealed that the SF25 experienced irregular drops in aerodynamic load coming from a microscopic imbalance between the floor and the rear suspension. These drops were not visible in normal telemetry, but became clear when the FIA analyzed deeper structural traces. Hamilton felt these drops as violent snaps through the final sector. When a car loses aerodynamic load without warning, the driver cannot predict the next reaction and must sacrifice speed to avoid losing control. This transforms a qualifying lap into an exercise in survival. The fourth problem involved the failed attempt to stabilize the car by increasing downforce. Hamilton selected a higher downforce configuration because he hoped to add security in the high-speed corners. Instead, the change produced extra drag on the straights without fixing the mechanical instability beneath him. The car became slower in a straight line and remained unpredictable when turning. This left Hamilton with a compromised aerodynamic map that offered no competitive advantage. It demonstrated that Ferrari could not mask its deeper issues with setup adjustments alone. A fifth problem emerged in the comparison with Charles Leclerc. Although Leclerc managed to reach Q3, he still finished 10th, more than a full second behind Oscar Piastri. His advantage over Hamilton came primarily from comfort with an oversteering balance rather than from a superior car. The telemetry showed that Leclerc experienced many of the same structural weaknesses, but managed them with a driving style more tolerant of rear instability. This highlighted that Hamilton was not underperforming. He was dealing with a car that simply failed to meet the demands of the track. The sixth problem is rooted in Ferrari's season-long development strategy. By freezing aerodynamic evolution early in the campaign, Ferrari left the SF25 without answers for circuits that demand modern high-load efficiency. While McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes continued optimizing their aerodynamic platforms, Ferrari attempted to compete with a static package. Qatar exposed the consequence of that decision. The car no longer matches the pace of technical progression, and Hamilton was forced to confront weaknesses that accumulated over months. The final problem is psychological. Hamilton responded to the car not with anger, but with resignation. His radio messages showed a driver fully aware that the limit had been reached and that no adjustment would unlock the speed Ferrari needed. At one point, he described the car as dangerous in the fast corners, a description the FIA later validated through structural evidence. When a seven-time world champion loses trust in the machinery beneath him, the problem is no longer about balance or setup. It becomes a failure of fundamental confidence, and in Qatar, that failure defined Hamilton's entire session. Ferrari's engineering team entered the Qatar debrief facing an immediate crisis because the data from Hamilton's SF25 revealed inconsistencies that pointed directly to a structural imbalance rather than a setup error. Engineers saw abrupt variations in rear load during the high-speed sections exactly where Hamilton reported violent snaps. These findings forced the technical group to treat the situation as a mechanical failure rather than an optimization issue. When a car loses aerodynamic load, without warning, the problem becomes a priority for both safety and performance, and in Qatar this priority became urgent. The first major pressure point involved understanding the interaction between the car's floor and the rear suspension. The FIA detected irregular drops in aerodynamic pressure that suggested a microscopic disconnect in how the structure handled vertical and lateral forces. Engineers now must analyze whether the issue originates from stiffness variation, temperature, induced deformation, or fatigue under repeated high-load cycles. Each possibility requires a different corrective approach, and each carries its own risk. Qatar's long radius corners expose weaknesses in load distribution, and the SF25 was unable to sustain stable aerodynamic behavior. The second challenge revolved around tire activation. Ferrari's recurring inability to heat the tires quickly enough put Hamilton in an impossible position. Cold tires generate unstable mechanical grip, which places even greater strain on the aerodynamic platform. The engineering team must design a revised warm-up strategy that delivers temperature precisely at the start of the lap, because without proper mechanical support, the rear instability becomes unmanageable. In Qatar, the tires remained below the optimal range through the entire opening sector, meaning Hamilton never reached the phase of the lap where the car could settle. A third engineering pressure came from the downforce configuration. Hamilton selected a higher downforce package to stabilize the car, but the data showed that this adjustment increased drag on the straights without improving rotation or stability. This revealed a more troubling truth. The SF25's aerodynamic surfaces were not working in harmony with the mechanical platform. Engineers must now reassess the aero map entirely because any attempt to add stability risks creating new imbalances. This makes setup experimentation extremely difficult at a circuit where aerodynamic consistency dictates lap time. Comparing Hamilton's data with Leclerc's added another layer of engineering complexity. Leclerc advanced through qualifying and reached Q3, but his telemetry displayed similar instability patterns. The difference came from his slightly more tolerant driving style rather than from a more stable car. Engineers must now identify whether the structural issue affects both chassis equally or whether Hamilton's SF25 exhibited a more severe variation. This involves deep inspection of suspension assembly's floor stiffness and mounting behavior. Even the smallest deviation under load can create large performance gaps, especially in a circuit like Qatar.